Hello, you beautiful people. So, have you just seen Rappa's drip marketing and are now curious about her kit and how she functions overall? Well, you've landed on the perfect video to get all the juicy details about Rappa's kit. Today, I'm going to walk you through everything we know about Rappa, including her basic abilities, talents, traces, technique, light cone, and, last but not least, her Eidolons. We'll also delve into her overall viability in the meta. I must say Rappa's kit looks rather intriguing, to say the least, and I believe she will be immensely fun to play. Also, her design is simply stunning, and contrary to my last video, it turns out she is indeed a rapper, a ninja rapper no less. You can think of her kit as an AOA version of Firefly's kit. And if you haven't pieced it together yet, yes, she's another unit focused primarily on the break archetype. Before we begin though, let me quickly say the usual disclaimer. This version of her kit is still in a very early stage, and it's likely to be changed or modified quite a bit in the future. So, don't take any of this information too seriously, and try to take it with a grain of salt. With that said, let's get started without further ado. Basic info and release date. Let's start with the very basics of her kit, and gradually move on to the more important aspects. Rappa is going to be an imaginary type character who follows the Path of Erudition and primarily plays the role of a main DPS on your team, although she can also serve as a viable sub-DPS unit. As I mentioned earlier, Rappa's kit is largely centered around the break archetype, meaning most of her abilities scale off break effect. From an overall look at her kit, she seems like a unit who will excel in the simulated universe game mode, which makes sense given that she's an erudition unit at heart. Her Eidolons are also quite powerful, but we'll save that topic for later in the video. As for her release date and banner, Rappa is expected to be the only 5-star character in patch 2.6, which likely means she'll be featured in the first half of the patch. If nothing changes in the patch schedule, her release date should be around 23rd October. Now that we've covered some basic information, let's stop stalling and dive into the details of her kit. Kit overview. Starting with her basic attack, there's nothing particularly special about it. When used, Rappa deals a certain amount of imaginary damage to a single enemy using her shuriken blades. I was hoping her basic attack would be somewhat similar to Jing Yuan's basic attack. But alas, it is what it is. By the way, I apologize in advance, but we don't yet have any specific numbers for her multipliers, so they'll likely be referred to as X amount for now. That's all you need to know about her normal basic attack for now. We'll likely return to it later. Next, let's take a look at Rappa's skill. Her skill is an AOA attack that allows her to launch a multi-target attack, dealing a decent amount of imaginary damage to all enemies on the field. There's nothing particularly special about her skill, but I hope the multipliers on it are decent. Moving on from her skill, it's time to discuss a crucial part of her kit, her ultimate ability. Her ultimate allows her to deal a significant amount of imaginary damage to all enemies on the field. In addition to dealing damage, her ultimate also grants her 3 stacks of something called ink, which will become important later on, so don't forget about them just yet. Her ultimate is mainly there to provide her with these ink stacks, as her kit revolves around them. We're still not done with her ultimate though. In addition to everything else, her ultimate grants her an extra turn immediately after use, meaning she gets a 100% action advance. It also increases her break effect and break efficiency by a certain amount. All in all, her ultimate sounds excellent and provides a lot of utility. Just a fun fact. The source that provided this information mentioned that she jumps off an urban skyscraper during her ultimate, landing the attack on enemies from above. Sounds quite amusing, doesn't it? Now, you're probably wondering what those ink stacks do. Remember when I said we'd return to her basic attack later? Well, those ink stacks allow her to enhance her basic attacks, enabling her to use her enhanced basics. Let's examine her enhanced basic attack in more detail. Whenever Rappa takes a turn with any ink stacks remaining from her ultimate, she consumes 1 stack and launches an enhanced basic attack on the enemies. This enhanced basic deals damage in 3 instances. If you're unfamiliar with what instances of damage means, allow me to explain. You know how Clara's ultimate works, she unleashes a series of damaging strikes on the enemies. That's what instances of damage refer to, dealing damage in separate parts. Back to her enhanced basic, it deals damage in 3 instances. The first 2 instances deal damage with a blast type radius, while the third instance deals damage in an AoE radius. I'm not sure why the first 2 instances are only blasts, but perhaps it's better this way, as it allows you to focus on reducing the toughness of the main enemy, rather than wasting the toughness break on side enemies. However, I haven't even mentioned the most broken part of her kit yet. Whenever Rappa unleashes her enhanced basic attack, it ignores any type of enemy weaknesses and reduces the toughness bar of the enemy, regardless of their element. This ability is incredibly powerful and firmly establishes her as a break-type unit. Overall, her enhanced basic attack is outstanding, and the universal weakness break makes it even better. Talent and technique. Now let's discuss her talent and, while we're at it, her technique. Starting with her talent, are you familiar with the simulated universe card Hell is truly other people? Well, her talent is quite literally based on this card, and just so you know, that card is one of the best out there. Her talent makes it so that whenever you break an enemy on the field, the adjacent enemies also take break damage, and their toughness bars are reduced. This talent already sounds fantastic on paper, and if the multiplier for toughness reduction is good, it could easily be classified as broken. She essentially has a simulated universe blessing built into her kit. What more could you ask for, right? Overall, it's a strong talent that potentially makes her viable outside of simulated universe as well. Lastly, let's quickly review her technique before moving on to her traces. Her technique description is quite amusing. It says that upon using Rappa's technique, she starts surfing on her flying blade, leaving graffiti marks everywhere while becoming invulnerable. She also starts rapping after using her technique. I still have PTSD from the 3.4 Lantern right rap, so I hope this one is better. Returning to her technique, whenever you enter battle after colliding with an enemy using her flying blade, Rappa deals imaginary damage to all enemies on the field, and reduces their toughness bars. She also recovers some energy at the start of her turn. It's a decent technique, but nothing particularly special. Traces. Alright, let's finally take a look at her traces. First of all, we don't have any information on her bonus traces, so apologies for that. However, I'd say all her major traces are excellent and synergize with her kit exceptionally well. Starting with her first trace, it's quite simple to understand. Whenever Rappa uses her enhanced basic or ultimate on an enemy that is already weakness broken, she deals super break damage to that enemy. Much like Firefly, she has a way to trigger super break damage on her own, further solidifying her as a break DPS. This could also mean she doesn't need to be paired with Harmony Trailblazer all the time, though they'll likely remain one of her best supports. Next, her second trace is also very effective. For every certain amount of Rappa's attack that exceeds a particular threshold, it increases her break damage by a certain amount. You can think of this trace as somewhat similar to Firefly's third trace. To clarify, if the threshold is 1500 attack and the certain amount is 100, for every 100 points of attack, Rappa has above 1500. Her break damage increases by a certain amount. I hope that explanation makes sense. This trace increases Rappa's break damage, while Firefly's third trace increases overall break effect. There's also another part to her second trace, but we don't have clarification on that yet, so I won't mention it for now. Still, it's a solid trace, and this also means that attack substats won't be wasted on her. Lastly, her third trace makes it so that whenever an enemy on the field is weakness broken, Rappa recovers some energy. It's a straightforward trace, very similar to Harmony Trailblazer's talent, and we all know how good their talent is in terms of utility. This trace allows her to use her ultimate more frequently, leading to more enhanced basic attacks and more damage. All in all, I'd say her traces complement her kit really well, and I'm glad she doesn't have any useless traces. Some of these traces in her talent also make her effective outside of simulated universe, which is a nice bonus. Light Cone and Eidolons. Now, let's take a look at her Light Cone and Eidolons. Starting with her Light Cone, the effect is rather unique and powerful. Upon entering battle, the wearer recovers 20 energy. Additionally, when the number of broken enemies exceeds a certain point, every basic attack the wearer uses advances their action forward by a certain amount. This is a particularly useful effect in a turn-based game. Lastly, let's discuss her Eidolons. Her A1 looks quite tempting as it increases the number of ink stacks she gains from her ultimate from 3 to 4. This is essentially an extra enhanced basic attack, which is very handy. Her E2 increases the toughness reduction on her enhanced basic attacks, which could potentially make it a game changer. Her E4 increases the speed of the entire team whenever she uses her ultimate, a rather unexpected but welcome addition to a non-supportive unit. Lastly, her E6 increases her imaginary resistance penetration, and further reduces the toughness bar of all enemies on the field when she breaks one, enhancing her already impressive talent. Final thoughts. And there you have it. That's everything we know about Rappa's kit so far. She seems like a really fun character to play, with a kit that looks both effective and enjoyable. I know some people might be tired of the break team archetype, but I genuinely believe she could be the last break unit for a while, as we've now got break units for all 3 endgame modes. I'm quite excited about her design, and I'm eager to see how she performs in the game. How do you all feel about her kit? If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Light Coning. Alright, let's move on to her Light Cone. The effect on it is unique and powerful, to put it lightly. Her Light Cone states that upon entering battle,